Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prastaya Utale Vimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namo Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prastaya Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Prachari Nirvasesha Punyavadi Astyachar Keshakarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paschachari Satkarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Punjabi Hari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Gopi Janavalabha, Jaya Giridharadhari, Jaya Giridharadhari, Jaya Gopi Janavalabha, Jaya Giridharadhari, Jaya Giridharadhari, Jaya Gopi Janavallabha, Jaya Giridharadhari, Jaya Giridharadhari, Jaya Gopi Janavallabha, Jaya Giridharadhari, Jaya Giridharadhari, Jaya Yashodhanandana, Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Rastodanandana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava 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 Jaya Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivijacharya Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Kota Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Jamuna Maya Ki Tulasi Deva Ki Bhakti Deva Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinda Ki Lord Chaitanya's Harinam Sankirtan Ki Brihat Madanga Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Gaurnitai Ki Ago Premanandi, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to Sri Guru and Grand Gopal to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paschachade Shattarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Panchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. All together. Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo. So today we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We're carrying on from the third canto, chapter 25, Lord Kapila Dev's teachings to his mother, Devahuti, and this is text today number 23. Here she is. Mat Ashrayaha Kataha Mishtaha Vanti Katayanti Shrinvanti Katayanti Cha Tapanti Vividaha Tapaha Na Etan Matkata Chetasaha Madashaya Katamishta Shrinvanti Katayanti Cha Tapanti Vividastapa Naitan Madgata Chetasaha Madashraya Katamishta Shrinvanti Katayanti Cha Tapanti Vividastapa Naitan Madgata Chetasaha. Word for word. Madashrayaha. About me. Kataha. Stories. Mishtaha. Delightful. Shrinvanti. They hear. Katayanti. They chant. Cha. And. Tapanti. Inflict suffering. Vividaha. Various. Tapaha. The material miseries. No. Do not. Etan. Unto them. Matgata. fixed on me. Chetasaha,
Chaitasaha,
their thoughts.
their thoughts.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Shri Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Engaged constantly in chanting and hearing about me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sadhus do not suffer from material misery because they are always filled with thoughts of my pastimes and activities. Purport. There are multifarious miseries in this material existence. Those pertaining to the body and the mind, those imparted by other living entities, and those imposed by natural disasters or disturbances. But a sadhu is not disturbed by such miserable conditions because his mind is always filled with Krishna consciousness. And thus he does not like to talk about anything but the activities of the Lord. Maharaj Ambarish did not speak of anything but the pastimes of the Lord. Lachangsi Vaikuntha Gunanavanane. He engaged his words only in glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sadhus are always interested in hearing about the activities of the Lord and his devotee. Since they are filled with Krishna consciousness, they are forgetful of this material misery. Ordinarily conditioned souls, being forgetful of the activities of the Lord, are always full of anxiety and material tribulations. On the other hand, since the devotees always engage in the topics of the Lord, they are forgetful of the miseries of material existence. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. End of purport. Hare Krishna. That was a wonderful purport by Srila Prabhupada, and wonderful in continuing the instructions of Lord Kapila Dev for all of us to eradicate the miseries of material existence. And primary amongst them is fear, which results in so many other emotional stresses. But fearfulness is the general characteristic of all conditioned souls. And by various means we try to avoid being fearful or try to solve the problem of fear, eradicate that problem. But try as we may, we cannot, because there is an underlying cause beyond that which has to be dealt with. It's not about removal of the objects of fear. We tend to think that that's the goal of life. And even we go to the sadhu, my dear Swamiji, please, I'm having so many problems. Please pray for me. I need to solve these problems. My husband, my children, my financial situation, my tooth, my everything. Please, everything's a problem. Please, Swamiji, please solve this for me. Or do some prayers for me. Maybe we can perform a yajna so that I can be freed of all of these objects of suffering. Sometimes we may think like that, or something like that. But that's not the business of the Swami, or the Guru, or one who's our real well-wisher. Just to perpetuate our illusion is not the goal of the sadhu, because the sadhu knows the cause of our suffering. Anybody can see the suffering on the surface. Your problem is you have a health issue. Well done. I could have told you the same thing. Your problem is you have an economic one. You can go on and on. There's a long list of possible causes of anxiety, fear, suffering, distress, misery, whatever it is. There's no shortage of objects or personalities or situations which may facilitate varieties of misery for the living entity in this world. And as Prabhupada has mentioned, the basic threefold miseries, Adi Atmika, the miseries of our body and mind. I doubt whether there's a living entity in the universe who has not experienced some kind of stress, fear, anxiety, pain, or whatever, misery of some kind due to the body and the mind. We may get used to it after a while. We get familiar, accept it as normal. But it is not normal. And even within that so-called normality, there are so many interferences. As soon as we feel a little comfortable, something comes along and disturbs our comfort. Somebody or something happens. Our karma catches up with us. So Adhyatmika, unavoidable within this material world, we could say. And then Adhibhotika, other living entities. Oh my goodness me. How many other living entities are there? That's the number of miseries probably which we could experience. Almost everyone's almost an eligible candidate to cause us some kind of misery, be it a fly, be it a family member, be it an ordinary person, be it an animal, be it what it may, an insect. Practically speaking, there's so many adibhotika problems in this world, big and small. And then adhyatmika, the weather. A typical example is the weather. The demigods, they're arranging varieties of weather for us and so many other things. Maybe there's some earthquakes, some volcanoes, some hurricanes, some tidal waves, tsunamis, or droughts or something like that, flooding, all varieties of different ways to disturb us. And that is one of the businesses of the material energy, to try to reform our character. So we stop trying to enjoy separately from Krishna. So in general, this material is dukkhalayam shashvatam. It is a temporary place full of misery in general. We sometimes think it's not, but that's the general underlying characteristic of this material world. Temporary, everyone can understand at least the form of it, and full of misery. Well, that will be interpreted differently maybe, but generally speaking, it is full of misery because there is fear and there is anxiety and stress and so many other specific unwanted experiences in this universe. So what to do about it? What to do about it? Well, these verses spoken by Lord Kapila Dev are specifically aimed at what to do about it. So we're going to go back now a few verses, and if you want to, you can locate it, in the same chapter where Devahuti mentions, it's his verse number 7, she says, Haribol. Didn't say Haribol. I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance, into the darkness or into the depths, like you fall into a pit, which you cannot get out of. It's a one-way situation. So we've fallen under the influence of ignorance, and we don't have our way out of it on our own. But therein is a clue, recognition. To recognize our problem is an important starting point. Just like if we're going on a journey, it's important to know where we are. If we don't know where we are, it would be difficult for someone to give us direction to get somewhere else. If we don't know what the sickness is, it's difficult for the doctor to give us the right medicine. So Devahuti is recognizing her sickness. There are sicknesses where she's fallen into the abyss of ignorance, where there are sicknesses also that she has, what is it, number 7? She's very disturbed. She's recognizing now. She's not trying to adjust it anymore. Enough is enough. She's very disturbed by the suffering or the disturbance. She's sick of it. The disturbance caused by my material senses. The senses do not have to be a source of disturbance or sickness, but when they're engaged, as we see in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a famous verse in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 8. Some of you know this verse, where Arjuna says, I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it. Even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth, with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. So similar, but coming from a different angle to Devahuti. Devahuti is submissive. She's approached Lord Kapil Dev, please clear this ignorance. Please remove it. Whereas Arjuna is kind of a little bit challenging. Huh? I can find no means to drive away this grief. But he's also recognizing that he can't do it. So he's approaching Krishna. Please clear it up for me now. Although he appears to be a little bit challenging. Nonetheless, he's approached Krishna. So he's on the right path. So now we'll go to a wonderful section in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 1st canto. And this is one of my favorite sections. There's nothing better to clear up our grief, our fear, our anxiety, the fact that we're under the mode of ignorance, or whatever mode it is, the fact that we're still frustrated, lamenting, affected by anger, affected by lust and greed, and so on. There's nothing better, nothing more soothing, nothing more therapeutic than to hear the words of a pure devotee of the Lord. So let us read some of those words. This is the 1st canto, chapter 7, text 5. Maybe we'll read a few verses. Let's see. Perhaps it'll come up in a minute. I do not know. But we'll start with text 5. This chapter is called The Son of Drona Punished. The translation. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the 3 modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material misery. We see a similar verse actually in the Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter. I think it's text 27. I didn't make a note, but I think it's 27. Yeah, if you want to look, 3:27 Bhagavad Gita. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma karkaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the 3 modes of nature. This is the problem. We're a false ego. We identify ourselves with this body. And thus we undergo, we experience various material reactions. And sometimes duality of happiness and distress, etc. Prabhupada writes in the purport to this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the root cause of suffering by the materialistic living entity is pointed out in this verse. It's pointed out with remedial measures which are to be undertaken, and also the ultimate perfection to be gained. Basically, in this verse, the problem is pointed out. The next verse gives the remedial measures to release us from misery. Because we're transcendental by nature, but because of the false ego, we're identifying ourselves as the body and as the doer, and so on. And Prabhupada, just a few points of the purport, this very long purport. Due to this unholy contact, referring to our senses to the sense objects, we also know in the Bhagavad Gita, there's another verse, again I haven't marked it, but it's in the 5th chapter, I think it's text 22. You can look and see, 522 is a very important verse. And this verse goes, Yehi samspashaja bhoga dukkha yonya evati. Adyantavanta konteya nateshurumate buddhaha. That an intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and the wise man does not delight in them. For most people, this is the only means of trying to find satisfaction or relief, is contact with the sense objects. But a wise person, intelligent person, does not indulge in this. He doesn't take part in this endeavor, because he knows that such endeavor, it simply causes suffering. Just like sometimes we experience that in this world we live in, people who are addicted to various activities, maybe to drinking or drugs or something, and they indulge, and you get initially you may get a little relief, but it further entangles us, and it leads to suffering. Pleasure in the mode of passion, at most. You maybe get a little bit of pleasure in the beginning, then it turns to misery, passion and ignorance. Baba says, the living entity misunderstands himself to be a material product. This means that the present perverted way of thinking, feeling, and willing under material conditions is not really natural for him. And we're misidentifying. This is the basic root cause of misery. Is this false identity. Identifying ourselves with the body and mind. And consequently, our indulgence in sense gratification. These are the causes of our suffering. Initial cause, and then, I could say, resultant cause. The Lord does not interfere with the task of the illusory energy, because such performance of the illusory energy is also necessary for reformation of the conditioned soul. I just want to take out it. So 2 ways. One is the material energy. It's like if we're probably not experienced, but the person who's in prison for criminal reasons, the prison itself is supposed to be some reform center. But beyond and above the direct, effect of being in the prison, there needs to be some education, some guidance required. So the living entity in the criminal situation may realize, get some realization, get some knowledge to overcome that tendency. Prabhupada says a little further in the purport, there's a very beautiful paragraph, the surrendering process. The surrendering process is the remedial measure for getting relief from the bewildering ways of the illusory energy. The surrendering process is completed by the influence of association. The Lord has suggested, therefore, that by the influence of the speeches of saintly persons who've actually realized the Supreme, men are engaged in his transcendental loving service. This is the other side, not just getting a beating from the material energy and thinking, help, I want to get out of here. Surely there's more than this. Why do I have to suffer? Well, that's, you could say, a good starting point to accept that. But maybe there's something more than this. And a pious person may try then to pray to God or something, try to approach somebody to help them. So here Prabhupada is saying that now, next stage, that by the mercy of Krishna, of course, we get the opportunity to associate with a saintly person. The conditioned soul gets a taste. We see this again and again in Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto, chapter 2, and chapter 5 and 6. Narada Muni becoming enlivened in the association of Bhakti Vedantas. As a young boy, but he became ecstatically surcharged with devotion by hearing from them, engaging in the serving them and hearing from them. By serving the devotees, associating with the devotees, one gets the chance to hear. And if we're very pious, fortunate, we'll put that into practice. He's gradually elevated to the platform of respect, devotion, and attachment for the Lord. So respect in the beginning, there's a little bit of faith, a little bit of respect for the Lord, and then there'll be a little bit of devotion. We may start to offer something to Krishna, render some service to Krishna, engage our senses in Krishna's service. And then, after that, attachment. We become attached. The whole thing is completed by the surrendering process. Herein also the same suggestion is made by the Lord in his incarnation of Vyasadeva. This means that the conditioned souls are being reclaimed by the Lord both ways, namely by the process of punishment by the external energy of the Lord, and by himself as the spiritual master within and without. Within the heart of every living being, the Lord himself as the super soul, Paramatma, becomes the spiritual master. And from without, he becomes the spiritual master in the shape of scriptures, saints, and initiator spiritual master. We have to understand, we have many spiritual masters. They're all basically the Supreme Lord appearing through different means or in different ways. Within the heart. This is still more explicitly explained in the next sloka. And a little bit more from this purport, a little further down, 1 or 2 paragraphs. Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum remedy for the suffering humanity in the clutches of Maya. So we want the cure. It's the Srimad Bhagavatam. Maybe one more paragraph. Here it is. Srila Vyasadeva, therefore, first of all, diagnosed the actual disease of the conditioned soul, i.e., they're being illusioned by the external energy. And he also saw the perfect Supreme Lord, his illusory energy, the living entities who were conditioned in this material world, and the cause of their disease, that we're hanging on, attached to this material world as a drug addict is attached to his drug as a relief. He knows nothing else. Doesn't know anything else. Unless the living entity gets an alternative, it's one thing to be detached from this world or desiring to be detached from this world, but that's not enough. Like a prisoner may repent and wish that they'd never caused that sinful activity, but unless they have something other to occupy themselves with, it's very easy to fall back in the trap. We're going to text 6, same chapter, text number 6. This is a very famous verse, very famous. Anato pashamam sakshat bhakti yoga mahokshaje lokasya janato vidvan chakre satvata samhita. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him. It means they're really nothing to do with us. They're a different nature altogether. Can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. So now he's giving the remedial measure. One thing to recognize the disease condition. The other one is to give a prescription. So here the prescription is being given. The linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this. And therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled the Vedic literature, this Vedic literature rather, which is in relation to the supreme truth. We hear earlier on how the sages in Naimishranya were very worried, to whom of religious principles gone after the departure of Lord Sri Krishna to his own abode. Where have they gone? And Sutta Goswami explains that this Srimad Bhagavatam has appeared. It's a beautiful verse in the 3rd chapter of this Srimad first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. You can find it. This Srimad Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun. It has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in this age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. The Srimad Bhagavatam, as we've just heard, the spiritual master, the Lord appears in the form of scriptures, sadhu, and initiating guru. We have all these various forms of Krishna to associate with, to get light from, guidance. In the purport to this 6th verse of the 7th chapter of the 1st canto, Prabhupada writes about 3rd of the way through the purport, I suppose. He specifically observed the unwanted miseries, referring to Vyasadeva. The unwanted, we don't usually want misery. If somebody says, please, can you help me? You say, what do you want? I want to be miserable. Please help me to be miserable. Very rarely that anyone would say like that, if at all. Mostly it's, please release me of my misery. Usually. Unwanted. We don't want these miseries. We want the happiness, but we don't want the misery. We want the cake without baking it. We want one. We can't have one without the other in this material world. It's the world of duality. So most people just want to get rid of the misery. Well, there is a world where we can get rid of the misery. So he specifically observed the unwanted miseries of the conditioned souls who are bewildered by the external energy. And at last he saw the remedial measure for the conditioned souls, namely the process of devotional service. It is a great transcendental science and begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glory, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Revival of the dormant affection of love of God or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but It solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. That's a very significant statement. The first one is mechanical, you could say. Begins with the transcendental process of hearing and chanting. And that will have the effect of removal, kleshagni, removal of so many miserable effects and miserable causes also. And will make us happy also. But it's not enough to awaken our dormant loving affection for Krishna, the sure state, the irrevocable state. Cannot be changed. When we comes to this platform of firm attachment to Krishna, and then emotionally developing one's love, real love for Krishna. But to come to that stage from being attached to Krishna to the awakening of our dormant love for Krishna, herein is mentioned, does not depend upon the mechanical process of hearing and chanting. It depends wholly and solely upon the mercy of the Lord. And of course, the more Krishna says, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So again, the surrendering process, surrendering to Krishna's will, the way that Krishna would like things. The more we surrender to the way Krishna likes things, then the more Krishna reciprocates by removing the illusion from our hearts, by removing the falsity, by removing the anarthas from our heart. So things start to become alive and awakened. No longer just an imposition, an endeavor to progress or control one's senses, etc. But one enters into another realm of devotion. But that's by the mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, he may endow him with his loving transcendental service. But even with the prescribed forms of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of the superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. Even the mechanical process of hearing and chanting can eradicate the miseries of material existence. So, to come to love of Godhead, that requires the mercy of Krishna. And the last verse which we'll read from this section, text number 7, is a beautiful verse. Simply by hearing this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. It springs up into like fire, springs up and extinguishes all the thorn bushes and all the weeds and everything else. Extinguished by giving this oral reception to this Vedic literature. And particularly, it's not completely eradicated in the initial stage, we could say. On the surface, there is eradication, but the roots have to be also uprooted. They have to be uprooted. And this is by intensive hearing and chanting from the right source. And obviously putting into practice what we hear. Application, hearing attentively and applying. This will uproot, rip out the roots eventually. We have to go deep. When many times we see this example, Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and many other places, which we'll hear about more later in a few days, 2 or 3 sessions down the line, but they emphasize the importance very much of association, very strongly, and to the degree that we associate with the material energy, and to the degree that we associate with the spiritual energy, our advancement in Krishna consciousness will be defined. It becomes effective or monitored by the degree of our association towards the material energy or towards the spiritual energy. We'll hear that more in a few days' time. In the purport, to this verse, towards the middle. Prabhupada writes, the transcendental sound, it means hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam from the right source. The transcendental sound is so effective that it acts at once by removing all material affections, various kinds of affections mentioned above. As mentioned before, a living entity develops a sort of complexity of material association, and the illusory engagement of the material body is accepted as an actual fact. In this world, we more or less all accept this body as the factual reality. Mind and body and the world around us, this is the reality. Come on, get real. Sometimes the people say that. All this spiritual stuff's all right, but you've got to be real. You've got to be real. But according to Srimad Bhagavatam, the material world is not the real world. It's like a temporary reflection of the real world. But when we're in the reflection, then of course we have no means to ascertain anything beyond it. That's why there's all the importance of devotees preaching Krishna consciousness to others, to give them a chance to realize there is more to life than meets the eye. There is more life to life than just material endeavor. Much more. Under such false complexity, the living entities under different categories of life become illusioned in different ways. Even in the most developed stage of human life, the same illusion prevails in the form of many isms and divides the loving relationship with the Lord, and thereby divides the loving relationship between man and man. By hearing the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, this false complexity of materialism is removed, and real peace in society begins. This is again the solution. People want peace, they want happiness. This is Srimad Bhagavatam is the solution for happiness and peace. Maybe not in the same exact way as people in general may think, but it really is. It's giving us why not only is it, and you could say, removing our reactions, but it's removing the cause of the reactions. Our entanglement in this material, our identification, our attachment, and all the various, let's say, unwanted enemies of the living entity in the form of lust and greed and envy and anger, illusion, madness, and so on, destroys them all. If we hear in the association of devotees attentively, the message of Srimad Bhagavatam dissipates. And one more little line from this purport. Until we reach the stage of re-establishing our lost relationship with Krishna, the illusion of accepting the body as the self will prevail. And thus, fearfulness will also prevail. So until we come to that platform, even in the neophyte stages of devotional service, one may still be experiencing fear or lust and greed and so on, anger, because we're neophytes. We're always near a fight. Neophytes. So by working under the direction of a Madhyamadikari, someone who's a little more advanced, we can gradually rise, we can gradually advance. And when there's no more identification with the body as the self, there's no more fear. All the fear that we experience, we can see in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, explained there, because of bodily identification of various kinds, mental and subtle and gross, we have this fear, this anxiety about situations because of identifying with them. So the secret is to identify with Krishna. Krishna is feared by fear personified. The holy name of Krishna. If we can't identify, we're not on that platform of realization, at least we can follow the path given by the realized souls. So that's the path of devotional service. That's very nice. And this process of surrendering, in the Bhagavad Gita, we can also see in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, how difficult Krishna says to Arjuna, this material energy is very hard to overcome. Yes, it is. Very difficult, Arjuna. For those who surrender unto me can easily cross beyond it. Not so difficult. Otherwise, it's consisting of the three modes of material nature, which are very binding. We can't get out. When we're tied up with ropes, how can we get out? When we're drowning in the ocean, how can we get out? We may recognize we're drowning or bound up, but that's not enough. We need help. Not really. No one can help us in the ocean if we're drowning unless somebody comes along. Somebody can help us, but on our own, we can't help ourselves. We need help. We have to take help from somebody who's not drowning. The Lord himself or his representative who takes shelter therein. So this material is surrender. Surrendering process means that we're taking shelter. We're surrendering to the will of the Lord. We're not just doing our own thing in relation to the Lord. That may be a certain stage of surrender, but it's not enough to free us from fear because we still think we're the doer. As long as we think we're the doer, we're going to be subjected to various sufferings and fears, whatever the form they may take, loss, recognition, so on, being defeated in various ways, not getting what we want. So many different causes are there of fear, anxiety. We see in the Parikshit Maharaj, there's a beautiful, again, ascertaining, you could say, or just analysis of the remedy for this problem. Recognition is the first thing. Same thing in medical world. If we don't recognize the actual problem, it's very hard to give a remedy. So recognizing our position in this material world in illusion, in ignorance, is an important start. And even Parikshit Maharaj in the second canto says, it's not Parikshit Maharaj, actually, this is Sukadeva Goswami. O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries, must hear about, glorify, and remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul and controller and the savior from all misery. He saves us. Just like if we're in trouble sometimes, help! We call out, help! Save me! And if we're lucky, someone will come and save us. If we're lucky, we're stuck in a burning house or drowning in the ocean or something. If someone hears, they might come and save us. Or simply, if we call out, Krishna, save us. But not just save us from the temporary effects of this world. We're still in the world we're in. But to save us altogether from the causes of being in this world. Save us from this illusion, this false identification, this attachment to sense gratification, which is binding every living entity in this universe. Save us, O Lord, our fervent pray. We've gone astray on our real business. Lord, please save us. Bring us back again. So the process of being saved is given here also in the first canto of the Bhagavatam. Tasmat Ikena Manasa Bhagavan Sattvatam Pati Shotagakitavyascha Dhyeyo Pujascha Nityada. Sutta Goswami says, therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, remember, and worship the personality of God as a friend of the devotees. This is the point. One pointed attention. We've got to, the more that we make this our focus in life, and the more we can be released. Otherwise, we just keep on carrying the baggage with it. Inside that baggage is potential suffering. The means of releasing us from having to carry that baggage is attentive hearing and chanting of the holy name. I think one of probably the major cause of our misunderstandings, of our lack of spiritual advancement, of our still being attached and experiencing consequent sufferings, is our lack of hearing, of proper hearing from the right source. Hearing the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. These are the remedial measures, as we've heard. Although devotional service is itself a remedial measure. In the verse we read earlier on, Vyasadeva has compiled the Vedic literatures, particularly this one, the Srimad Bhagavatam, because devotional service, well, to be guided, of course, by devotees, but the primary way that we wake up, that we come to our actual senses, is hearing the message of Bhagavatam and hearing the holy name. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, I just selected a few verses, chapter 1, text 13. Because of my vow on the verge of death, this is Parikshit Maharaj again, I have given up even drinking water. Yet because I am drinking the nectar of the topics about Krishna, which is flowing from the lotus mouth of your Lordship, my hunger and thirst, which are extremely difficult to bear, cannot hinder me. Normally, hunger and thirst, all the other various pushings in this material world, they distract us. You can say that some of them are necessities, but in the real sense of the term, they're not. One is on this platform, like Parikshit Maharaj now has very quickly come to this most elevated platform of pure devotional service, because on that, in the beginning stages, we may be just offering something to Krishna and eating whatever we like, practically. In the more advanced stages, we offer Krishna what he wants, and we regulate our eating to be only what Krishna wants us to eat. The more advanced stages, one doesn't even care about eating. Why not? Because one doesn't think about it, as this verse says. Not even thinking about it, because he's so wrapped in hearing. Of course, it was a very unique position. With 7 days left to live, and maybe we would also be a little more serious if we realize that any moment we may die. Prabhupada said that, isn't it? How do we chant? We chant as if this is my last breath in this world. We might get a little bit more serious. But the urgency is not there. We don't realize how much danger there is, or how much miserable this material world is. We still kind of try to enjoy it. So we're not so eager, we don't see the urgency so much to take up pure devotional service. We still maintain various attachments. Sometimes we get a good shock and then we become serious again, for a while. And then we get back into our rut again after a while, usually. But what to do? Because of my vow on the verge of death, I have given up. Because Parikshit Maharaj, he has no time to think about eating and sleeping. Too much absorbed. 24 hours in the purport of the first verse, the one we covered in the very beginning. Satam Ketyantamam Tantaschadridavataha. That Krishna says, these are the characteristics of purity. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. This is the mood of the pure devotee. They have no time. One of the symptoms of Sharanagati, surrender. They don't waste any time, not a minute. There's no time to waste. Beyond that level. But this is a pure devotee, and by associating or serving such pure devotees, then those characteristics, those qualities will gradually rub off on us. They'll gradually begin to appear in our own hearts by the mercy of Krishna. In the 12th canto, again, another nice verse there, which is, one thing Prabhupada said about Parikshit Maharaj is curtailing his eating and sleeping, not in that purport, in another place, I don't know where, but Srila Prabhupada said this is something like this, paraphrasing. This is an example of how this Krishna consciousness movement will really spread. This is how it will really spread. When we actually start realizing I'm not here to be the enjoyer. We're here to serve Krishna. We're here to please Krishna's senses. And even to the point where a devotee doesn't even think, as Pariksha Maharaj wasn't even thinking about it. There was no time to think about eating and sleeping. But Prabhupada said this is an example, perfect example of how Krishna consciousness can actually spread. But as long as we're still ourselves, still trying to get something out of Krishna consciousness from a material perspective, then of course the effect will be less. It won't be so neither on ourselves or upon others. The one who's completely, truly renounced, truly renounced in recognizing everything as Krishna's and should be used in his service, they can affect the hearts of all. It's like Krishna himself practically can change people's hearts. And then we have a nice verse in the 12th canto, which I'll just read. Chapter 4 rather, text 14. For a person who is suffering in the fire of countless miseries and who desires to cross the insurmountable ocean of material existence, I don't know if anyone out there wants to cross the insurmountable ocean of material existence or not. It sounds good, doesn't it? Let's see, what have we got to do? There is no suitable boat. Okay. Suitable boat. There is no suitable boat except that of cultivating devotion to the transcendental taste for the narrations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's pastimes. That's the only suitable boat. Everything else may take us here and there and bring us to that eligible platform of serving in different ways, purifying our hearts. But ultimately, the only suitable boat is that of cultivating devotion to the transcendental taste of the narrations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's pastimes. This is the remedial measure to counteract all of our anomalies, all of our sufferings in this world. Somehow or another to hear about the Lord and his transcendental pastimes. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, but somehow or another we must hear. And hearing is the key factor in advancing, from our perspective, in devotional service, ultimately the mercy of Krishna. Excuse me. In the Bhagavad Gita, we see there's a nice verse in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Text number 36 of the 4th chapter. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. They free themselves. Now, the result of work is not just the work itself, the results of the work. It's the work itself. And what does that mean? It means that we're still thinking we're the doer. It means that we're still entangled in this misconception. And we're still attached to the causes of the suffering. Not just the suffering, but the causes. Devotional service removes the causes of our suffering, which are our illusions, our false ego, our entanglement in the material sense objects, our thinking I'm the enjoyer and I am the doer, and so on and so forth. Even if you, and then in that 4th chapter, text 36, there is a beautiful verse there. Krishna says, even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. It's an ocean. We need a good boat to cross it. As the sages in Naimisharanya recognize Sutta Goswami, we think, by the will of providence, that we have met you as you are the captain of our ship for those who are suffering in this age of Kali, that we can cross over this ocean of suffering. We need a good boat, a good captain. We have both. Prabhupada is here. He's given us the process of hearing and chanting of devotional service. We just have to get on board, get absorbed ourselves In the party on board the boat, the Sankirtan boat, there's a party on board. It's not just you're sat there like a dummy, hoping to get to the other side one day. No, on board that boat, which Srila Prabhupada is the captain of this boat, there's an incredible party going on all the time. Dancing, chanting, feasting, hearing the holy name, hearing Bhagavatam, different festivals and different other services. There's a festival going on all the time, a party going on. We just have to stay in that party. Otherwise, as we see in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Vishayavini Vartanteni Raharasya Dena Masavajanga Sopyasya Param Drishvana Vartate. One may restrict oneself from the sense objects, but within one's still attached to sense gratification, but by experiencing a higher taste, one becomes fixed in consciousness. We've got to get that higher taste. Sankirtan party is much more pleasurable than the mundane party. However it may look, whatever it may be, but it is always a cause of suffering. Whereas the Sankirtan party is releasing us from that cause of suffering, completely releasing it. This is the sadhu's business. The sadhu is always engaged in sharing this Krishna Katha with others, sharing this opportunity to get released. He has no business other than that. He's an ocean of compassion, always concerned for the condition of the fallen conditioned souls, and praying for his mercy. There's a nice verse in the 251, Bhagavad Gita again. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries. We just read that. By going back home, back to God. Second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text 65. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established because they're satisfied. When we're satisfied, we don't need all these other things. This is the secret to become satisfied in Krishna consciousness. We have no more interest in material sense objects. We just want to absorb ourselves more and more in pure devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering. In the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 29th chapter, text 39, Sukadeva Goswami says, my dear king, this is Narada Muni preaching to King Prachani Bhartashi. My dear king, in the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations, and thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of God. In that place, if one gets a chance to hear the constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of a river, one will forget the necessities of life, namely hunger and thirst, and become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion. So this again there's two sides here. There's the one side of those who are fully absorbed, and the other is those who aren't, and how they become freed of misery. Those who are fully absorbed are automatically righteous citizens. They have no inclination towards material life. Those who have an inclination must hear from such persons. That's the Hakutama Shloka Gunanavada. We have to hear and chant about Krishna from those who are Nivrita Krishna, those who have no material affection. Their only business is glorifying Krishna in various ways. And that's the ultimate conclusion of Gita, isn't it? Mamana Bhava Bhakto Majhaji Mam Namaste. Always thinking of me, always worshipping me, bowing down, endeavoring to serve me in various ways. In other words, full absorption in Krishna. There is no room for absorption in anything else. So we have to hear from such persons, serve such persons, if we want to get out of the entanglement, become released from the knots of the three modes of nature. And even in the preliminary stages, in the Bhagavad Gita, Matra Sparshas to Kuntya, Krishna explains simple ABC, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course of time are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They are arising from sense perception, sky and environment. And one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So the beginning stage may be a little tolerance. For a pure devotee, it's not a question of tolerance. They wouldn't be able to tolerate the very fact that there's anything but Krishna consciousness. But at our stage, we may have to tolerate a little bit the urge, the pushings of the senses, the happiness and distresses due to our contact with the sense objects. Tolerate this urge. Come on, let's enjoy, and so on. No. There's a little steer. This is surrendering. At that stage, surrendering to Krishna. A person who has given up all desire for sense gratification, who lives free from desire, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain peace, real peace. And this also we see in the 5th canto, 5th chapter, text 29 of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explains there, Bhuktaram Yagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Krishna is the enjoyer, he's the proprietor, Sridham Sadhana. He's the friend of all living entities. Yatkamam Shantam Richati. Such a person who understands that can become free of the causes of misery and come to the platform of peace, true peace, where there's no more disturbance, the tribulations and the whirlpool of material existence. It may be there, but one is not disturbed by it anymore. One is not attracted by it anymore. One is attracted, but we have to have that higher taste, that attraction for hearing and chanting Krishna. And once one has gained that, in the 8th chapter, Krishna says, having attained this, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. As in this material world, Krishna explains everywhere, from the highest planet down to low, everywhere, no matter where there is, this fear is there. There's a place of misery. But the devotees, they are freed of this misery. Why? Because they don't have to take birth again, because they attain to the highest abode. As long as we're in this material state of consciousness, there will be a cause of suffering. Now, what are they doing? In the 10th chapter, Krishna explains, Machitama Bodhi and Tattvalastam Tashanti Cha Ramanti Cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to me or to my service. And they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one person. This is devotee. They're never tired. They always like to hear about Krishna. That'd be nice. And by association of those who do, that may rub off on us. By association, Hiranyakashipu himself describes this. He says association is just like coming in front of a crystal, whatever reflects on crystal. So devotees are like pure holy name comes through them, the Supreme Lord's purity and everything about him, all of his qualities, everything comes through the pure devotee, and by associating that may rub off on us to a degree that we associate. We never tire, the sage says, we never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of God, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. The same conclusion we see in Bhagavad Gita. Sanjaya is also thrilled at every moment hearing the words of Bhagavad Gita. His hairs are standing on end. He's so excited on hearing the transcendental message of Godhead. So wonderful. So these are some of the related points regarding the nature of the effect of association of sadhus and what it means. Ascertain the cause of our suffering is essential. We are suffering first. What is the cause of our suffering? What is the remedy for our suffering? And then taking the remedy for our suffering. And then eventually we may come to the platform of these great souls. Just like Raghunath Das Goswami, we sometimes hear how he was so enwrapped in devotional service to Krishna. He never, just like Parikshit Maharaj, he never even thought about eating and sleeping. Prabhupada said this is a symptom of our advancement when we're not living to eat. We're simply maybe a little eating is there for our service. We're living for some kind of sense enjoyment. No, a little bit of necessary sleeping and eating. Just like Raghunath Das, he was eating very little, as we know, we can't imitate. Just a little poundful of buttermilk once every few days, and sleeping next to nil. And one time the story goes, I don't know where it's from, but we hear this story sometimes. Raghunath Das's tongue is saying, Raghunath, if we don't eat something, we're all going to die. Because he wasn't eating anything. The tongue was telling him, come on, we've got to eat something. Otherwise, we're all going to die around here. All the different limbs, everything's going to die. And he said, oh, come on. You're not satisfied by tasting the sweet nectar of the name of Govinda, which is more tasty and sweeter than the creamiest sweet rice, and the name of Radha, which is more fragrant, the most than camphor, and the name of Shamsundar, which is more delectable than the Shikarini, and so on. He goes on, preaching to his tongue. What's wrong with you? Can't you taste the nectar of the holy names? Just be satisfied with this. This is more than enough to quench our thirst and hunger. He was so absorbed. He never thought it wasn't a matter about tolerating, regulating. No, there was no time to think about it. So absorbed in hearing and chanting and protecting from fear, because we see this with many cases, and we'll speak of our Srila Prabhupada, we see so many great devotees because they're so absorbed in devotional service. There's no fear whatsoever because they got nothing to lose. Fear is due to fear of loss of some form or another, gross and subtle. Pure devotee has nothing to lose. We have only everything to gain. At our stage, we also have everything to gain by associating with these pure devotees. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, I'm going to finish there. Any questions? Sorry, I'm a bit sleepy this morning. Sometimes we say chant for the sick, devotees, or Vaishnavas. Can we really chant for someone else? Or we just pray for someone? Well, chanting is a prayer. We are chanting the holy names. Why? Why do we chant? We're chanting to purify our own hearts and the hearts of all living entities. A pure devotee, when they chant, benefits all living entities. They're oceans of compassion, always praying like Vasudeva Datta for the welfare of all living entities. So although it's not within our power to say, I'm chanting now for this person in one sense, but the mood, the feeling within the heart, of genuine feeling of concern, or whatever it may be for other living entity. And if that entices us to chant the holy name with more selflessness and more purity, more attention, then it will certainly benefit one and all by Krishna's grace. Krishna reciprocates with his devotees. Prabhupada went in 1966 to a United Nations program in New York where they were praying for peace. Well, Prabhupada went along and chanted. Then he produced what's called the peace formula, the real peace formula, which was the verse we quoted earlier, Bhoktaram Yagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwara. And those who accept the Supreme Lord as the proprietor, the enjoyer, the friend of all, actually get peace, freedom from the pangs of material existence. So the prayer that Prabhupada gave us was, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please cure Srila Prabhupada. We're not God. We can't dictate between God and his devotee. At the same time, we need the devotees. So we're praying, my Lord, please, we need the association of this wonderful Vaishnava, or whatever. Please, may he not suffer, or they may not suffer. Devotee naturally doesn't like to see anyone suffer, naturally. And we ourselves very much need the association of devotees. So that chanting, if it helps us to chant more, it's a great incentive. If it pleases Krishna, it's wonderful. If the mood is for the welfare of other living entities, we're making some progress, that's for sure. Prahlad Maharaj was praying like this also. He said, I'm not at all for my own sake. I'm not really worried. I'm not in offense. He was said one different prayers. He says different things. I'm not afraid, but I'm only afraid for the living entities. We're so much entangled in this material world. Please kindly deliver them. So in that mood, a devotee internally, if not externally, prays. So when we're chanting, actually when we're chanting, we all know we're supposed to actually just water the root and just focus on the holy name and not divert our attention to other things. So the ideal thing would be in the mood of, whatever, we may not be qualified anyway, but in that mood of being a well-wisher of some kind, chant the holy name and try to be attentive, because by watering the root of a tree, all the parts of the tree will benefit. And Krishna understands. He understands exactly what our intentions are. We don't need to make a big issue, advertising or anything. Krishna knows it. The main thing we should try to do is to try to hear the sound of the Mahamantra. How to encourage devotees to come to Harinam Sankirtan. When in classes they mention how important it is, but at the same time are not inclined to go out to do the most important service of this age. Well, of course, we understand, Prabhupada made it clear that all authorized activities in this movement are Sankirtan. Deity worship, cleaning, farming. If it's done, Sankirtan is a state of consciousness. It's not only, normally we define it as an activity, but in real sense, it is a state of consciousness when it's in the mood of glorifying Krishna and nobody else. Complete absorption in bringing pleasure to Krishna. Focus. Whatever service we do. But the specific activity introduced by Lord Chaitanya of Nagar Sankirtan, going out and chanting the holy names, is the Yuga Dharma. It is the Yuga Dharma. And of course, we may have other service, but if we don't want to go on Harinam Sankirtan, there's a problem. We're in a diseased condition of life. Simple as that. We may not be able to go out. We may have other activities. We may be afraid. We may recognize I've still got fears. Okay. In one sense, at least we recognize it. Some humility is there. We're not fighting against it exactly, not trying to diminish or minimize the importance of Nagar Sankirtan. It is the Yuga Dharma. It is that activity which will change the world, which will change our hearts, which will most please the Supreme Lord. But the consciousness also has to be borne in mind. And if we're proud or angry because we're going out and others are not, that consciousness does not please the Lord. We have to show by example. Encourage others, but not become despondent, angry, negative, whatever it may be, if others don't come out. Everyone's got a reason, good or bad, why they do what they do. We should try to work on our own hearts. Gaur Chandra Prabhu has just started to take up a lead for the Sankirtan in Christchurch in New Zealand. We wish him all the very best in that service of Nagar Sankirtan. Previously, another devotee was doing it, who has now moved. So So he's now got the privilege, it's a great privilege to be going out, even if we go out alone, as Prabhupada did on many occasions, performing Sankirtan Yoga. It's the greatest service in one sense. Many other activities, every activity is the greatest service, but it should never be at the cost of Nagar Sankirtan. It must always be there, and inside the house, outside the house, everywhere. Kirtan should be going on. This is the main thing. If we really want to advance in Krishna consciousness, with a humble heart, not in a way that we're trying to diminish others' service in any way, not in a way that we're, discriminating against devotees, but in a humble way, to encourage everyone. And the more our hearts are pure and full of compassion, etc., the more naturally others will become. One devotee came with me yesterday on Harinam Sankirtan. They said, I'm always trying to avoid going out. But when I'm out after 5 or 10 minutes, I always think, why don't I do this all the time? It's a kind of a funny dilemma which most of us go through. We get into these kind of ruts that we just kind of get stuck in a rut and forget the Yuga Dharma, forget that we have Yuga Dharma in the temple, in the home, everywhere we can do Yuga Dharma, Sankirtan, but particularly it's meant for spreading to every town and every village of the world, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was. You have to preach this. There has to be preaching, there has to be example. Whenever we can. When I first joined the temple, it was their mood. They gave me another service to make and just do incense to raise some funds for the temple. But we do it as quickly and efficiently as we could, so we could quickly get on Sankirtan. And find a half an hour of the day we could get out, or something like that. Take this opportunity. The more we're eagerness, as we see from the sages, they were very eager. This eagerness is the secret. Rupa Goswami says it's loyal. This eagerness is the price of our Krishna consciousness, the eagerness to perform Nam Sankirtan. We have to help each other as we try to cultivate this. We do tend to get into a bit of a social lull sometimes, or kind of a mechanistic situation. I do my 1 hour, 2 hours service or whatever we're doing. I go to a Bhakti Vriksha once a week. I go to the Sunday feast. That's enough. Well, we won't get very far doing that. We've got to try to do, always we should be thinking how I can do more, not less. Someone say more or less, but that's contradictory. We want to do more, not less. And the tendency is we always, lazy, inertia, motive ignorance, less, reduce. Sign of advancing in devotional services, we have more taste for hearing and chanting and less interest in other things. Save and accept devotional service. Right? How to become, detached? It's kind of related, isn't it? It's not a question of becoming detached in one sense, or let's say callous or ignorant of it. It's just a question of sincerity of heart. Their purpose is to perform Nam Sankirtan Yogya and every living entity in the universe. Why only a few? Every living entity in the universe can be immersed in Nam Sankirtan. But because we're immersed in other things, therefore we're not immersed in Nam Sankirtan. So we have to try to shower that mercy on others, not just a few devotees who are at this present time accessible or practicing whatever it is. There are millions of living entities. Those personalities are very special, very wonderful devotees. One amazing personalities. Well, every devotee is amazing because somehow or another in this very materialistic situation, taken up devotional service. We just want to take it further, that's all. Take it further, take it further. Of course, some devotees have more inclination towards by nature towards certain things. The result of that, according to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, is it should evoke an increase in our desire to perform Hare Sankirtan, or Nam Sankirtan at least. It's not for the mood of enjoying. Sometimes we forget that. We always have to bear in mind that we're doing it for the pleasure of Krishna. It's not, I don't like it. Who cares we don't like it? It has nothing to do with devotional service in reality. maybe in the beginning stage. There's nothing to do with devotional service in reality. What matters is what Krishna wants. But we tend to put what I want first. So it's a question of Siddhanta, it's a question of Sambandha, of understanding. What is the actual meaning of Sankirtan? What is the actual meaning of devotional service? And if we don't have we may theoretically have it, but if we haven't sufficiently executed, put it into practice, performed that austerity, that penance, which Lord Brahma underwent, which Krishna says is my very heart, without penance you cannot realize me. Without performing that penance, then we cannot expect there's going to be a natural awakening, unless there's already an inclination for singing and dancing, which remains a kind of a materialistic activity, but still is good, some good, fortunate piety. In other words, in one sense, our piety is not yet evolved enough. We haven't actually become evolved in terms of Sukriti. Bhakti and Mukha Sukriti has not yet grown sufficiently to understand. Not just to understand, but to execute the Yuga Dharma and the Nam Sankirtan Yuga Dharma. It's okay, just keep pushing and trying, not pushing in that sense, but keep trying in devotional service, encouraging. The more we engage in our service in a pure way, the more we hear Srimad Bhagavatam from the right source, in the right way, the more we chant Hare Krishna. And gradually that Bhakti Mukha Sukriti will grow. We may eventually come, when will that day be mine? Happy Bolo. When will that day come when my taste for the holy name will be increasing? When in my heart will your mercy shine? When will that day be mine? Offenses ceasing, taste for the name increasing. When will your mercy shine? In my heart, when will that day be mine? Devotee prays like this. Offenses. It's because of offenses we have no taste, Lord Chaitanya said. Because we are still having offenses in our hearts. So every one of us, we should be very careful to avoid offenses, criticizing other devotees no matter what they're doing, etc., etc. We should be very careful. And just humbly carry on with our service and try to encourage others and try to be pure in our service. The holy name, Bhagavatam, may be Krishna himself, but what will I have? When will I have? When will that day be mine, the eyes to see? Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurandalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave. This is the sadhu's business. When Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj was asked, what's the business of a sadhu? He said that. He said, they give us the eyes to see. We don't have the eyes to see. But how? We come before Krishna. That doesn't just mean an external thing. Coming before Krishna, we've already heard. We come with an open heart before Guru, Shastra, Sadhu, as well as the deity, etc. Kindly guide me. Please give me shelter. They have the eyes to see. We follow them. Surrender. As they surrender, I give them. Tesham Satadya Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti. I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. That's the eye. Giving us the understanding. But we have to accept the instruction. Our tendency is we're a little rebellious, we have a little independent streaks, and we tend to not necessarily follow. Or we follow according to our own interpretation. Part follow, part not follow. But to the degree that we associate, or we allow the Lord to see us, Prabhupada said, don't try to see Krishna, act in a way that Krishna will see us. It's more Krishna seeing us than we seeing Krishna. We come before Krishna, and when Krishna sees that we're sincere, then he reciprocates accordingly to cleanse our hearts. So we can begin to see emotional changes will take place in the heart, repentance, feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, dependence, etc. will start to evolve in the heart when we expose ourselves to Krishna. Become naked in that sense, not physically, of course, whereas our heart becomes like that. Casting off all of these, just like King Prataparudra hankered for the chance to see Lord Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who only when he took off his kingly dress, having acquired all the necessary Sukriti, was he able to actually get that opportunity. We have so many identifications of being what we're not. And that is important that we have to hear submissively from the right source and execute the process according to what we hear. Next one. Some services force me to be in a conversation or a situation which definitely not favorable for my endeavor to become a pure devotee. Meetings about some topics which seemingly politics between devotees, how to survive the meetings, how to counteract their effect on the mind, counteract, I think. Don't contract the effect, please. Counteract it. Contract means you sign into it, become a part of it. Counteract the effects on the mind. Well, I can't comment on the nature of these meetings exactly. I don't know what I mean. I kind of do, but I'm not going to say I do what these meetings are all about. We seems to be a situation here where we're in a position we shouldn't be in a position we're in. Maybe it's not our rightful position, maybe, to be in such meetings. And we all know well, maybe we don't, but in 1976 in Mayapur, when Srila Prabhupada was in Mayapur and their GBC were meeting, there was a massive kind of, let's say, clash was going on between certain groups of devotees. And there's a big thing, and everyone expecting Prabhupada to give the solution to the whole thing. He called the GBC and said, you hear what's going on downstairs? And the temple downstairs was downstairs from Prabhupada's room. Kirtan was going on, and Prabhupada said, this is the solution. Harinam Sankirtan. He said, so many, what do they say? Meetings, resolutions, no solutions, dissolutions. Prabhupada says something like that. So many meetings. Okay, management meetings have to be there, but they should be instead of the real meetings. We're not having enough proper meetings. If the managers, Prabhupada said clearly, I sent it out last night. He said clearly, unless one comes together for hearing and chanting, you cannot be a spiritual leader. You can be a material leader, but it's useless. To be a spiritual leader, you have to come together and hear and chant about Krishna. Then we may be able to be some use, even if we have to have meetings of various kinds to manage, which obviously have to be there. They're also part of the Sankirtan, part of the facilitating, part of the preaching. But if there's not sufficient hearing and chanting, then they can become what we call political, if you want to call it. They become selfish. You can say a bit off the mark. Hearing and chanting is essential if we want to actually make any meeting of any value. Next one. So try to take part, arrange meetings of hearing and chanting about Krishna, whatever level people are on, but reading Prabhupada's books, hearing from Srila Prabhupada's book, loud kirtan, not this mechanical kirtan. It does about as much to us as blowing on a boil when we stand like a statue in a mechanical kirtan. You let go, dance, chant. Unfortunately, we don't all take advantage as much as we probably need to of these various, let's say, sanghas. And reading and chanting together, discussing Krishna Katha together at its various levels, how we can progress and so on. This is a real meeting. All the problems are due to a lack of Krishna consciousness. There is no other problem whatsoever. The only problem. A sadhu does not like to talk about anything but the activities of the Lord. That means that a leader, a king, can deal with management by only speaking of Krishna's pastimes, how to learn. Well, yes and no, not exactly. They see everything in relationship with Krishna, because if it is one's duty in life, then one has to follow the dharmic directions. We see in the case of Priyavrata, he wanted to say goodbye to all of his management of the universe. He had to manage the universe, not very much, just the universe. He wanted to say goodbye to it, but Narada Muni was almost encouraging him. He's good at that. But along came Lord Brahma, Swayambhuva Manu, his daddy, came along and said, come on, son, what are you going to do? My God, this is your duty. You have to do it. So he prayed that he not become affected in the course of that. And they assured him also that he would not become overwhelmed. We have to do our duty in this world. If we're a manager, we have to manage what we should manage in a Krishna conscious way, and not in a mundane way. So it has to be done. It's not that we ignore that. I mean, there may become a time sometimes when that's the case, but that's not the general case. That's also Krishna when we learn how to manage for his pleasure. That's also Sankirtan and devotional service. Always remembering we're the servant. We're acting on behalf of our Guru and Krishna to perform our service. Whether others follow or not, we cannot force. But at least we try to perform our duty according to what there's Svadharma, and there's two kinds of dharmas. Dharmas. One is according to our material nature, and the other is according to the spiritual directive. So when we've been given a direction by our spiritual authorities to manage or to do a particular service, that is our first duty, our first service. We should try to find out how to do it as nicely as possible, to please them, to serve the other devotees in public, etc. We have to do it. That's our ticket back to Godhead, because it's coming from Krishna through the Parampara. And if it's a sadharma according to our material nature, that's also to be performed according to the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We're supposed to act according to our nature, but that may not always be the case in Krishna conscious movement, because sometimes due to various reasons, the spiritual master or the authorities may ask us to engage in other services for other reasons, sometimes to break our false ego or our attachments, sometimes because there's an emergency need. But these things have to be done, but they should be done. Krishna says, you do your duty, but at the same time, you think of me. Your mind focused on me, your intelligence focused on me, your activities, everything dedicated to me. You will attain me without a doubt. So like that, we perform our duties within Krishna consciousness as much as we can. Next one.
It's a private question.
What does that mean?
Only you are seeing the question.
My question is that my mind gets disturbed with external sufferings and unliking situations during my service in temple. I try to overcome by keeping engaged in devotional service. But sometimes my mind gets so much disturbed that it disturbs my morning sadhana. Please help me. Hare Krishna. Common situation. Now, some devotees are also disturbed by, the world situation. The material world is certainly, there's no shortage. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said material world means the turmoil and annoyance. So what is the solution to this? Good sadhana, okay, you're being disturbed or you're chanting your rounds due to the previous or the external circumstances around us, whether they're in the home, whether they're at work. Of course, we already have a pretty good big baggage of them within our minds. Around the world situation, we have plenty of causes which we ascertain as causes of disturbance. Samasrita ye padapalavapavam mahatpadam punya yashomarai bhavam vadiyavasaparam param padam param param yad vividam mutation. There is disturbance or danger at every step. So what to do? Even in Vrindavan, sometimes it's said, yes, there are snakes. Why? Hey, maybe they're pretty snakes. Maybe they don't bite. But they're scary. Snakes by nature scare. They've got this unique energy which causes fear in people's hearts in most cases. Unique. It just emanates fear. That's a personification of fear, practically. So snakes are there. Why? What do they do? What do the residents of Vrindavan do? Maybe they scream. Gopis might scream, but what do they scream? Krishna! Krishna! They scream Krishna. Take it positively. Opportunity to take shelter of Krishna. Be positive. Don't be negative if you can. Try to be as positive as we can. Realizing, yes, for whatever reason we are in the material world, we are weak. We are easily overwhelmed by disturbances around us and within us. Very easy. Take shelter. Pray to Krishna. Pray to Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. Pray to the Guru. Pray for help. Let's turn to Krishna. When there's danger at every step, not just some places. Everywhere there's danger. Only those who've taken shelter of the killer of the Muradin, only the one who takes shelter of Krishna, the one who kills all doubts. Arjuna was really disturbed by his circumstance. So disturbed, as we heard in the very beginning, I can find no means of driving away my grief. Even if I win an unrightful kingdom on this planet, residence in heaven, now I can see nothing that's going to drive away my grief. Helpless, hopeless. But he took shelter of Krishna. At least that's what we should do. Try to pray. We are weak. We're very weak. It's easy to get overwhelmed. We keep trying, keep chanting, serve the devotees, do our best, take shelter of Krishna, make some nice prayers before chanting, and keep praying. Only by the mercy of the Lord. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj said that one who tries to, who thinks that they can overcome the inattention while chanting, we can overcome it on our own, is an illusion. We cannot do it. Only by the mercy of Krishna. Therefore, one should fervently pray for the mercy of the Lord. We may overcome this inertia or this illusion of inattention, becoming distracted to other objects or different kinds of inattention. It is impossible for a living entity to single-handedly overcome this. Therefore, we have to pray to the Lord very fervently to help us. And if you can, of course, associate with devotees to help us also at these times, sharing, sangha, discussing these things amongst each other, and helping each other to overcome this tendency to become weak in their sadhana, etc. Help each other. Next one. Hare Krishna. There's one here private, but there's nothing there. So,
No, this is to write. That's to write.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Well, we're at the usual time. We're a few minutes before 12. Well on time. So any more questions we can take, but otherwise we'll have a little kirtan and there's the cartels. Thank you for keeping me awake just about. We have another session this afternoon in 3 hours from now. Is that right? 3 hours from now, specifically for the UK, but you're all welcome to tune in if you wish, and some of you will be well in bed by then, I think. I think those in Australia and New Zealand will be under the modes of goodness by then. Sorry, yeah, under the mode of goodness. Dreaming of Krishna. Or completely something else, another world, you're in another world. You're welcome to join us 3 hours from now. I guess we'll be on Wednesday as well. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Guru, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Go Premanande Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Kishi Gorditai Ki Harinama Sankirtan Ki Prihatpadanga Ki all the assembled devotees Ki all the unassembled devotees Ki all those who are not even unassembled devotees Ki Jai Go Premanande all glories to Srila Prabhupada Hari Bol let's see everyone